My wife believed her friends' lies about me cheating, so she tracked my car, bugged my office, and broke into my workplace. I let her dig her own grave, then served her with divorce papers. Sup Reddit. My wife's new friend group ran more surveillance on me than most law enforcement agencies, and somehow I'm the bad guy. This is going to be a long tense, so get your popcorn and strap in. I'm Neil, 33 male. Me and my wife Catherine moved to Columbia, Maryland about 2 years ago because I landed an operations lead gig at a defense contracting firm in Howard County. Supply chain scheduling and delivery logistics for government contracts. Good money, good benefits. We'd been stuck in the same small town in western Pennsylvania for 6 years, and I figured a fresh start might do us both some good. She was on board. We packed up and went. Catherine was the social one between us. Could make friends anywhere. Walk into a room knowing nobody and leave with dinner plans. That was her thing, and I never had a problem with it. Sure enough, within 3 weeks of moving, she had a whole crew. Fitness group near the Merriweather area, brunch spots around the town center, group chats going nonstop. The main one was this woman Courtney. Loud, opinionated, recently divorced, the type who steers every conversation back to herself. Catherine thought she was great. I thought she was a lot, but whatever, not my friend. The first couple months were fine. We were settling in, and Catherine seemed happy. She'd come home from her brunches and tell me about whatever drama was going on in the group, and I'd half listen. Normal married life stuff. But around month 3, something shifted. I chalked it up to the stress of adjusting. New city, no family nearby, me working longer hours than I used to. Told myself she was just getting antsy and it would pass. But it didn't. I started noticing that when I walked in the door, she was already watching me. Not like a hey, welcome home look, more like she was studying me. I'd come in 10 minutes late because the road was backed up, and she'd be standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed, asking me where I was. And when I'd answer, she wouldn't just take it and move on. She'd hold eye contact for a bit too long, like she was waiting for me to slip up. Then the phone thing started. One night I was on the couch scrolling, and I laughed at some meme my buddy sent me. She was across the room and immediately wanted to know who I was texting. I showed her the screen. She looked at it way too long. I asked if she was good, and she said yeah, but with that cold tone. Every time I overheard her on the phone with her crew, they were talking about cheating. Husbands with second phones. Guys with work wives. Some woman at their gym whose husband had apparently been living a whole other life for 3 years. That group collected cheating stories the way some people collect baseball cards. And the message was always the same. Your husband is probably doing it too. You just haven't caught him yet. There were 2 others in the group besides Courtney. Sydney worked in HR at some healthcare company. The quieter one who wouldn't start a fire, but would absolutely hand someone the matches. Bridget was an ER nurse with 3 kids who lived for gossip and would drive 30 minutes across town to deliver it in person. Courtney sold real estate, which meant she had a flexible schedule and way too much free time. Together, they were one big echo chamber, all drama. And Catherine, who'd always been the type to go all in on her friendships, bought every word of it. The first time Catherine went full interrogation mode on me, I honestly thought she was messing around. I'd stopped at the Giant on Snowden River Parkway to grab stuff for dinner. Regular Friday grocery run. It took me maybe 40 minutes because the place was packed. I walk in with 2 bags of groceries, and she's sitting at the kitchen island, phone face down, staring at me like I just crawled through the window at 2 in the morning. She wanted to know why it took so long. I told her the store was busy. She asked which store. I told her. She asked if I ran into anyone. No. Are you sure? Catherine. Yes, I'm sure. What's going on with you? Yeah, nothing. Now I can't ask questions? This became a daily thing. Who I ate lunch with at work? Why did my meeting run 20 minutes over? Why did some woman from her own friend group supposedly spotted me at a coffee shop with a female coworker? I told her my team grabs coffee together most mornings, and yeah, women work on my team. She didn't push back, but she didn't let it go either. And the follow-ups always came at weird times. I'd think a topic was dead, and then 2 days later she'd bring it back up with a new angle. So that coffee shop you were at, is that the one on the corner or the one near the parking garage? Constantly testing me. The thing that got to me was how calm she was about it. And nothing I said was ever good enough. I could have hooked myself up to a lie detector in the middle of the kitchen, and she still would have found a reason to doubt me. Then one night, I'm getting ready for bed, and her phone lights up on the nightstand. The screen was facing me, and I caught a text from Courtney before it went dark. Something along the lines of, "Did you check his car yet? Don't wait too long. They always cover their tracks." I froze. Didn't say anything. Just laid there staring for minutes, running through what was happening to my marriage. Next morning, before I backed out of the driveway, I got down and ran my hand along the underside of the car near the rear wheel well. Part of me was hoping I'd find nothing, but my fingers hit something small, hard, and magnetic. GPS tracker. Cheap little thing you can buy online for like 60 bucks. I sat there in the driveway for a minute, just holding it. When did we get here? I thought about ripping it off and slamming it on the kitchen counter right then, but something told me not to. If she knew I'd found it, she'd just get more careful. So I put it back exactly where it was, took a photo of it with my phone, and drove to work like nothing happened. That afternoon, I called a divorce lawyer, not to file yet, just to understand my option. The lawyer, a woman named Veronica, told me Maryland is an all-party consent state for recording, that the GPS tracking without consent could constitute stalking under state law, and that if I wanted the strongest possible position, I should document everything, avoid tipping her off, and let the pattern build. That's what I did. I started keeping records. Every accusation, every interrogation, every weird question that came out of nowhere. The tracker stayed on my car. I knew it was there, and I let her think she had the upper hand. Every day she watched my movements on her little app. She was building my case for me. For the next 3 weeks, I got my financial house in order, opened a new checking account at a different bank, and started routing a portion of my direct deposit into it. Nothing that would raise a red flag. Pulled copies of all our financial documents. Mortgage, joint accounts, credit cards, car titles, everything stored in a secure folder she couldn't access. I also went through the last 12 months of credit card statements line by line. That's where I found the tracker purchase. She'd bought it off an electronics site 2 weeks before I found it on my car. The charge was buried between a Target run and a gas station fill-up. Screenshotted it. Only after all that was locked down did I pull the tracker off the car and put it on the counter between us. I asked her to explain. She looked at it, looked at me, and without even blinking told me it was for her peace of mind. Said it wasn't a big deal. Said if I had nothing to hide, I shouldn't care. I told her this was a very big deal. That normal people don't track their spouse's car. She actually rolled her eyes at me, told me I was overreacting and to just let her have this one thing so she could relax. I asked her what I had ever done. In our entire time together, that would make her think she needed to do this. I went through it. Never been late without an explanation. Never hidden my phone. Every single suspicion she had came from something one of her friends said about some other guy in some other marriage that had nothing to do with us. She didn't have an answer for that. She just shook her head like I was the one not getting it and walked away. I watched her and started thinking to myself, this wasn't the woman I married. That's when I realized this wasn't a marriage problem anymore. And I'd already been building the file for weeks. A few days after the tracker confrontation, I pick up my phone in the morning and there's a new app in my drawer. Some location sharing thing I definitely didn't install. She must have grabbed my phone while I was in the shower. She knew my passcode because I'd shared it with her for years. We had nothing to hide from each other. I screenshotted the app, then went into my phone settings and captured the installed apps list, permissions, and location access showing what the app had been granted. Exported all of it to my secure cloud folder. Then I changed my passcode, reset my biometrics, and turned on login alerts for my accounts. Only after all of that was preserved and locked down did I remove the app. I told Catherine it wasn't okay. She didn't even flinch. If you're not doing anything wrong, why does it matter? Same logic as the tracker. Same dead-end argument. I told her trust goes both ways, and she'd been stomping on it for months. She called me manipulative. Said I was trying to make her feel crazy so I could get away with whatever I was doing. Classic reversal. I logged it and moved on. That week I brought up counseling. Told her we needed to talk to somebody because, whatever this was, it was getting worse. She shut it down immediately. Said she didn't need a stranger telling her she was wrong for being worried about her marriage. Said counseling was for people who didn't know what the problem was, and she knew exactly what the problem was. Me. I told her fine, but I wanted it on record that I tried. I sat down with Veronica again and walked her through the full timeline. She told me to keep going. Meanwhile, Catherine started showing up at my job. The first time, she walked into the office around lunch with a bag of food, all smiles, saying she was in the area. I work near Fort Meade. Nobody is in the area by accident, but I played it cool, introduced her to a couple people, and ate lunch with her in the break room. Fine. Now here's how visitor access works at my building. You check in at the front desk, get a visitor badge, and someone escorts you. During her legit visits, she only ever had access to the lobby, the break room, and the hallway between them. She didn't get to roam free. But here's the thing about repeated visits. You start picking up on patterns. She saw the layout of the ground floor. She noticed which doors people used. She watched the shift change timing at the side entrance by the loading dock, where a couple guys on the logistics team would prop the door open to take breaks. If you're paying attention, and Catherine was always paying attention, a few escorted visits is all it takes to learn the building's weak spots. 2 days after the first visit, she showed up again. Then again the next week, always at random times. Never a heads up. She'd come in, look around, ask who was in my office that day, who I had meetings with, whether the woman she saw walking down the hall was someone I worked with. One time she pointed at a post-it note on my monitor with a woman's name and number on it. Vendor rep I'd been trying to schedule a shipment review with. Catherine stared at that post-it like it was Exhibit A. Every visit followed the same pattern. Show up cheerful, scan the room, ask questions. Then she'd leave, and I'd get a text 2 hours later asking about something she noticed while she was there. A jacket on a chair that wasn't mine. A coffee cup with a lipstick mark on someone else's desk. But the real one was when she came in on a Thursday and spent 20 minutes chatting up our receptionist, Jasmine. I didn't even know she was in the building until after she'd left. Jasmine pulled me aside the next morning looking uncomfortable. Said my wife had been asking about my daily schedule, who I eat lunch with, and whether I ever stay late with anyone in particular. She'd framed it all real friendly, but Jasmine said the questions kept getting more specific and it felt off. I thanked Jasmine and asked her to do me a favor. If my wife came back again, I wanted her to inform me right away. She agreed. I also asked her to write down what Catherine had asked about while it was still fresh. She did, and I added it to the file. That night I sat Catherine down and told her the drop-in visits were done. That people at my job were noticing, and it was making everyone uncomfortable. She hit me with, "You should be grateful I want to see my husband at work. A good husband would be grateful, and a good wife wouldn't be interrogating the receptionist behind her husband's back." She didn't have a comeback for that one. Just went quiet, stood up, and went to bed without a word. But I knew she wasn't done. Now here's the thing. Defense contracting firms aren't regular offices. We handle government contracts, some involving controlled program data and sensitive operational information, security clearances, restricted access areas, badge protocols, cameras everywhere. You don't just stroll in and wander around. Security violations, even minor ones, get treated like major incidents. Like I said, during her escorted visits, Catherine never had unsupervised access beyond the lobby and break room, but she'd seen the building's rhythm. She knew about the side door by the loading dock and the shift change habit. That door wasn't supposed to stay propped open, but it did. And Catherine observed everything. So when my boss Keith called me into his office on a Tuesday, and I saw his face, I knew right away something bad had happened. He told me that over the weekend, the security team reviewed footage and flagged an incident. A woman had gotten into the building through that side door during the shift change window. She bypassed the main entrance where visitor check-in happened, went to the second floor, spent about 12 minutes around my office area, and left through the same door. She was wearing a cap and kept her head turned away from the main hallway cameras, but the stairwell camera got her face clean. The second floor where I sit is the admin side. Open office layout, no badge doors. The controlled program areas are deeper in the building behind their own access points. She didn't need to breach a vault to do damage. She just needed to get close enough. My stomach dropped. Keith wasn't done. Security did a sweep of my workspace after they identified the breach and found a small device mounted under my desk. GPS and audio recorder combo. The kind that connects to a phone app so you can listen in remotely. My wife had broken into a defense contractor's facility and planted a surveillance device in my office. I'm not going to pretend I played it cool in that moment. My hands were shaking. I was angry. She could blow up my entire career. Keith leaned forward. "Neil, I need you to understand where this is headed. HR and the security director are already looped in. Legal's involved. They're talking about filing a formal complaint with law enforcement." I took a breath and told him I'd been documenting this behavior for weeks and that I already had a lawyer. He looked surprised, but also relieved. Before I left his office, Keith told me the security team needed to interview me. Standard protocol. They had to verify I wasn't involved, that I hadn't given her access or tipped her off about the side door. I sat in a room for about an hour answering questions about my marriage and my workspace. They pulled my laptop and work phone for a 48-hour review. I walked out and called Veronica, told her everything. She told me to file a police report that afternoon and request a protective order immediately. I drove to the police station on my lunch break, gave my statement, showed them the log, the tracker photos, the screenshots, the credit card records. The officer taking my report ooked at the file and said that was going to make the detective's job a lot easier. I also filed the petition for a protective order, got an interim order through a commissioner that same day. Within a few days, I had a temporary protective order hearing in front of a judge, and the final hearing was scheduled about a week after service. Veronica handled the filings and made sure nothing slipped through the cracks. When I got home, Catherine was on the couch. She could tell something was off. I didn't ease into it. Asked her flat out if she went to my office over the weekend. For about half a second, I saw the mask slip. Then she caught herself. "What are you talking about?" You're on camera, Catherine. They found the device. She went pale, stood up, then tried to justify it. Said I forced her hand. That if I'd just been open with her, she never would have had to go that far. That she did it because she loved me and needed to know the truth. You broke into a building that handles government contracts. You planted surveillance equipment next to a room where restricted program briefings happen. Do you understand what you've done? They're not going to do anything, Neil. Come on. Nobody's going to come after a wife for looking out for her marriage. I already filed the police report, and I have a protective order in place. It's already been granted. Her whole face changed. She started panicking. You did what? I also have a lawyer. Have had one for a while now, and I've been documenting everything. Every tracker, every interrogation, every time you showed up at my job, every app you installed on my phone while I was in the shower. All of it. She didn't say anything for a long time. Just stood there processing. I'm filing for divorce, I said. Papers will be ready by end of week. She started shaking, tears coming. Neil, please, don't rush things like this. I got caught up in what they were saying, and I know, and I'm done with this circus. She tried to keep talking. Brought up our wedding, our first apartment back in Pennsylvania, the road trip we took to the Outer Banks. She went through every good memory we had like she was reading from a list, trying to bury what she'd done. And honestly, part of me wanted to let it work. I'm not made of stone. There was a version of this woman that I'd been in love with for years, and hearing her bring up all those memories hit harder than I expected. But then I remembered the tracker under my car, the app on my phone, the receptionist looking at me sideways, the device under my desk, and I knew that the woman standing in front of me crying wasn't the same one from those memories. That person was gone. Maybe she'd come back someday, but it wasn't going to be while I was still standing there waiting. I went upstairs and started packing. I was out 3 days later. This all went down last year, about 18 months into living here. From the first tracker on my car to the break-in at my office was about 4 months. Moved into a one-bedroom in Ellicott City that I'd already scouted weeks earlier. Had the lease lined up, my finances separated, my documents secured, and my legal strategy mapped out. The whole move took half a day. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because Catherine's first move after I left was to run to everyone she knew and start spinning her version. Told them I was cruel, that I was overreacting, that I was punishing her for a mistake any worried wife could have made. She cast herself as the devoted wife whose husband walked out the second things got hard. And some people bought it. I got texts from people I hadn't talked to in weeks telling me I was being too harsh. One guy actually told me Catherine probably just read too many articles online and I should cut her some slack. Another one, a mutual friend from back in Pennsylvania, sent me a message saying I was ruining her life over something that could have been a conversation. Like I hadn't tried having that conversation 6 different times. A woman from her fitness group sent me a whole paragraph about how marriage takes work and how men need to be more emotionally available. Never met me, didn't know a single thing about the situation, but she felt qualified to weigh in anyway. And then there was this guy from our old neighborhood who told me she was just scared and that I should be a man about it and forgive her. Be a man about it. As if letting someone stalk you and saying nothing is what men are supposed to do. I sent them all the same message, that they were welcome to believe whatever version they wanted, but the facts were documented, the footage existed, and I wasn't going to apologize for refusing to be stalked by my own wife. Then I blocked every single one of them. Now, the divorce is where things really shifted. Catherine's mistake was assuming I'd roll over, split everything down the middle, walk away clean just to make it stop. She even told her lawyer she expected a straightforward settlement because, and this is a direct quote from the filing, no children were involved and the finances were relatively straightforward. Veronica came in with receipts. Literally. I filed no fault. Maryland overhauled its divorce framework a couple years back, so you don't need to prove fault just to get divorced anymore. But just because the divorce itself is no fault doesn't mean her conduct disappears from the equation. The stalking, the surveillance, the break-in, the active criminal case, all of that gave us massive leverage in settlement negotiation. It factored into the protective order, into whether alimony was even on the table. And it made her side very motivated to settle quickly before any of this got aired out in open court. First, the relocation. I'd moved us to Maryland for my career, but I'd also covered the moving costs, the security deposit on the house, and the first 3 months of the mortgage solo, while Catherine was still getting settled and not working. Those costs were documented to the dollar. Second, the criminal exposure. Catherine was staring down an active criminal case connected to the same person she was trying to negotiate a settlement with. Her lawyer knew that if this went to a contested hearing, every piece of evidence I had would come out, and none of it made his client look like someone a judge would want to reward. Third, and this was the big one, Veronica argued that Catherine's criminal behavior had directly jeopardized my security clearance, which is basically my entire livelihood in the defense industry. If I'd lost that clearance because of her stunt, I'd have been done. Not just at this company, in the entire field. That argument carried real weight. Catherine's side tried to push back, argued she'd made sacrifices relocating, that she deserved equitable distribution. Her lawyer submitted a statement saying Catherine had been manipulated by toxic friendships and was in emotional crisis at the time, and that a punitive outcome would be disproportionate. Veronica responded with the full timeline I'd been building for months. Every logged accusation, every documented drop-in, the tracking app screenshots, Jasmine's email, the credit card records, everything. And the kicker, Catherine's own suspicious observations note from her phone, which came out during discovery. Her lawyer had to hand it over because we'd requested all communications related to surveillance activity. I was sitting across the table in mediation when Veronica slid it over to Catherine's lawyer. He picked it up, started reading, and his face went flat. Page after page of surveillance logs, dates, details, names of women she'd spotted at my office. He set it down, leaned over to Catherine, and whispered something. She wouldn't look at me for the rest of the session. The emotional crisis argument didn't hold up. Neither did a clean 50-50 when she hadn't contributed to the mortgage for nearly a year and was facing criminal charges connected to the person she was asking to split assets with. We settled to avoid dragging it out further. I didn't get everything I wanted. Nobody does in divorce. But the agreement protected the big stuff. I kept the house. Her share of marital equity was a fixed buyout amount, and it wasn't much given her lack of contribution during the marriage's final stretch. My retirement stayed largely untouched since it was mostly premarital contributions, and no alimony. Between the active criminal case, her conduct, and the fact that she'd chosen not to work for the better part of a year, there was no basis for ongoing support, and her side didn't push it. Her lawyer made one last play requesting I cover her legal fees since she was financially disadvantaged. Veronica pointed to the credit card statements showing $4,000 in charges at restaurants and boutiques over 3 months during the same period she wasn't paying the mortgage. That request went nowhere. It wasn't about taking everything from her. It was about protecting what I'd built and making sure I wasn't funding the consequences of her own decisions. While the divorce was playing out, the company's case against her was running on a parallel track, and that one was even more brutal. Their legal team laid everything out clean. Security footage, the device, purchase records, visitor logs, camera timestamps, and then the receipts. When the investigators pulled her purchase history, they found she hadn't just bought the one GPS tracker I found on my car. She'd bought 3 separate tracking devices total. The car tracker, the audio GPS combo she planted in my office, and a third one that nobody had accounted for yet. That third one is what got me. After the purchase records came out showing 3 devices, Veronica told me to do a full sweep of everything I owned. Every bag, every jacket, every piece of gear, the car trunk, all of it. I went through it all that night, checking every pocket and lining. Found it in my gym bag, tucked into a small pocket in the lining that I never use. I didn't touch it with my bare hands, put it in a Ziploc bag, and turned it over to the police the next morning as physical evidence tied to the existing case. That one had been active for almost 2 months. I thought about all the times she'd casually ask how the gym was, and now I realized she already knew the answer before I opened my mouth. She was testing whether I'd lie, every single time. The tracking data showed she'd been cross-referencing my gym visits to check whether I was actually going where I said I was going. She'd built an actual spreadsheet matching my movements against what I'd told her my plans were for each day. The amount of time and energy she poured into this was honestly disturbing. Catherine's lawyer tried to frame the whole thing as a marital dispute that got out of hand, argued she was a concerned wife acting out of emotional distress, not a criminal. He even brought up that Courtney's own marriage ended due to infidelity, suggesting Catherine had been primed to see threats that weren't there. Decent angle. But the evidence was too heavy. The company's security director got up and explained what that audio device could have picked up. My office sits right next to a conference room where controlled program briefings happen. If that thing had been running during certain meetings, it could have captured information covered by federal contract security requirements. Device records audio. Audio transmits to a phone app. That data now exists on a personal device with no clearance, outside any protected system. Whether Catherine intended to capture controlled information or not didn't matter. The exposure existed, and in the defense world, that's all it takes. The company didn't view this as a personal thing. They saw it as a breach of their security protocols and contract obligations. Now here's how this side played out. The prosecutor initially pursued charges including illegal interception and recording of communication, planting an audio device and remotely listening in falls under Maryland's wiretap laws, and that's felony territory, up to 5 years and serious fines. Her lawyer fought hard to keep that off the table. In the end, she pled down. Misdemeanor trespassing and stalking, in exchange for probation, community service, and strict no contact and no trespass terms. Even though it landed as a misdemeanor, the exposure had been serious. Maryland stalking carries up to 5 years even as a misdemeanor. The plea deal was designed to avoid far worse outcomes, and even that left her with a permanent record. The company also pursued a separate civil case for the full cost of the security audit they had to run after the breach, plus additional damages. That settled on its own terms, and she's paying for it. The company issued a formal no trespass order, and my protective order covered the workplace as a named location. The case got continued once because her lawyer asked for more time, which dragged the whole thing out another 6 weeks. The company pushed hard for the full judgment on the record to set a precedent. Catherine was the example. And the friends? That crew who started the whole thing? Scattered. Every single one. Courtney, the ringleader, ghosted her the second the legal stuff got real. Turns out Courtney was the one who sent Catherine the link to the specific GPS tracker. She sent it in their group chat with instructions on how to install it without getting caught. When the heat came, Courtney deleted the whole chat and blocked Catherine's number. What she didn't know was that Catherine had already forwarded several of those conversations to her own email months earlier, back when she was building her case against me. Those messages showed Courtney coaching Catherine on where to hide the tracker and telling her to check my office because that's where they always slip up. Catherine's lawyer turned them over during discovery, trying to prove outside influence as a mitigating factor. Backfired. All it did was create a documented trail showing the whole thing was premeditated and coordinated. Sydney and Bridget unfollowed her on everything within days. Not one of them showed up to a single hearing. These women had spent months pumping Catherine full of paranoia, and the second any of it landed on a court docket, they were gone. Her parents found out through the legal filings. Her dad called me one evening, and I could hear it in his voice before he finished his first sentence. "Neil, is all of this true? The break-in, the tracking, the charges?" "Yes, sir, all of it." He went quiet for a long time. Then he said he was sorry, that he and Catherine's mom had tried to warn her about that friend group months ago, and she wouldn't hear it. I told him I appreciated the call and didn't hold anything against him. From what I heard later, her parents confronted her about everything, told her to own it, to face what she'd done. She didn't, doubled down, kept insisting I must have been hiding something, and that she'd been right to investigate. Her mom broke down during the conversation. That's when they stopped taking her calls. So there was Catherine. No husband, no friends, no family willing to pick up the phone, unfavorable divorce settlement, criminal record, restitution payments, and not a single person left who was willing to pretend she was the victim. And me? I'm writing this from my apartment in Ellicott City, 7 months removed from all of it. Got a lease that's mine, a job that's solid, and a life that actually feels good and peaceful again. I started hitting the gym without a tracker hidden in my bag. Reconnected with a couple old buddies back in Pennsylvania over the phone, something I'd let slip during the worst months because I didn't have the energy to talk to anyone. Even started coaching youth flag football on Saturday mornings through the Howard County Rec program. My coworkers noticed something too. My security clearance review went through clean, which was a weight off my shoulders I can't even describe. One wrong finding and everything I'd built would have been gone because of what she did. But all those months of documenting paid off. I also did something a lot of people told me not to do. I went after Courtney. I didn't sue her, but I made sure her role in this didn't just disappear into the background. When Courtney deleted that group chat, she thought she'd cleaned the slate, but those forwarded emails from Discovery had her name all over them. Every coaching message, every tracker recommendation, all sitting in court records. I had Veronica send a cease and desist to Courtney, letting her know she'd been identified in court filings in connection with the stalking and surveillance against me, and that any further contact would result in a civil action. The letter referenced the specific messages where she'd coached Catherine on tracker placement and encouraged the break-in. She never responded. But she also stopped showing up in any mutual spaces, scrubbed her social media of anything connected to Catherine, and blocked me on everything. Message received. Last thing about Catherine. I heard through her dad a couple months after everything was finalized that she'd moved back to Pennsylvania, living with a cousin outside of Pittsburgh. Couldn't find work in Howard County because the criminal record kept showing up on background checks. In an area where half the workforce is cleared or adjacent to cleared jobs, that's a career death sentence. People still come at me sometimes. Tell me I went too far. That pressing charges on my wife was cold. That I should have handled it quietly, given her one more chance. Maybe, but every chance I gave her, she used it to make things worse. Every boundary I set, she crossed it and came back for more. I didn't want to blow up my marriage. She did that. I just made sure it didn't take me down with it. She made her choices. I made mine. And I'd make the same ones tomorrow. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.